But how's everyone doing tonight? I hope you guys are doing well. Today we're going to be reviewing a very tired concept that I'm kind of tired of explaining, but every week I get another question about it. So maybe I didn't do a good enough job really explaining how to properly apply it. So today we're going to go over a my favorite topic, to be honest. It's a topic that a lot of people enjoy, and I think it was one of the more revolutionary ideas that we had at WTG. But it's going to be tempo and positional advantage. So that's going to be pretty good. If you're new, this will serve as a little bit of a recap to catch you up to speed. If you struggle with this is the stream for you. We're going to go in depth on what it is, how to properly define it, and more importantly, we're going to learn how to capitalize on it in our games. But before we go anywhere, the screen is frozen, which is weird. There we go. Ah, weird. Ah, Everlyn might have done something to my stream. Yeah, I might actually have to stream on this for a while. Weird. I changed some settings around, so if there are some technical difficulties, please forgive me. But the game is running nice and smooth. I just have to figure it out. Because I'm new to fighting games in general, and I want to get the most from people who play for years. Yeah, I'm more than happy to help you. No worries. Sensei, your screen is frozen. Yeah, sounds like it's a technical difficulty that I have to work through, unfortunately. We have Destroyed City. Where are we going to lab, guys? What we doing? Where do you guys want to lab? Destroyed City it is. Ooh, that is some damage. Nah, I wanted a lab here. That was a good compromise. I don't feel like looking at that ugly map. So I was like, you know what? Let me take it easy on my CPU and just play here. This is nice, light and bright. I like it. Alright, guys. Alright, guys. I'm doing great. Oh, wait, no, you meant Everlyn. Okay. That was rad. Yeah, this is my main team. Anyway. So, now I'm going to start off with a little bit of a Q&A, but not like an actual Q&A. So guys, for those of you that are familiar with what tempo and positioning are, what are some things? Do you guys feel like you have a pretty good idea? Like, I kind of want to know, chat, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well would you say you understand positioning and tempo? On a scale of 1 to 10, do you guys feel hazy on it? Do you feel like you get the general idea? Do you guys know how to apply it? Wing Dude, 7. You know, Wing Dude, I want to see that 7 reflected in your play more often, to be honest. Because judging from the way you play, I don't feel like you should be saying 7. No offense. Tempo equals 8. Don't always recognize it in time. Alright, guys. Anyway, so I'm glad I can believe that, Saber, because I know you did fencing, and it's very similar in fencing, and I think for you it's just a matter of translation. Ooh. Fuck. This route is so outdated, but so fun. I wonder if I can push that. Whew. That's why his tag is Saber. Anyway. So that's good. That's good. So you guys have a pretty decent understanding. We're going to talk about tempo, positioning, and positional advantage. And the first thing we're going to talk about is what a position is. Okay, chat. I want to see, in your own words, what does position mean? I want to see what you guys say. Oh, really? Okay, I like that. Meter health. Okay, a bit simple, but I understand. Position is the area you're located on the screen, and depending on where you are, your options may vary. Okay. So far, the closest is Saber. Saber, you get a cookie. I would say Saber's response of, actually, I'm sorry, Fuzzy. Fuzzy, you get a cookie. Physical position, resources, yeah, relative state of the game for each player. I would say that's pretty close. Oof, that's tough. You know, I'm gonna be honest, it's been a while since I played Bluku. Like, I pretty much put him on the back burner since 21 came out. And I haven't really had much of an occasion to play him. Bluku vacation getting cut short? A little bit. I kind of miss him. But, so we're going to talk a little bit about positioning today. So what exactly is positioning? So a position, as mentioned, is essentially where you are on the screen, what resources are available to you. But what answer that people are forgetting that I haven't seen is I haven't seen people consider assists. They've seen, you know, I wanted to see assists. But another thing that determines a position is also the physical point character themselves. A position, for example, this position right here, looks completely different for Blue Goku than it does for Kefla or Beerus. Because here, I have 2M. I have a very far-reaching 2M. So this position does actually look a little bit different. About that far, right? So this position actually does look a little bit different. I literally said assist to my answer. I didn't read your answer, Nimbus, because you assume that I pay attention to you. I love you, bro. You're my phone. Any given time in a game where the party has the amount of health, meter assist in combination with the physical positioning on screen. Yeah, actually, you know what? Fuck it. You get a cookie. Nimbus is the only person that I would say is 100% correct. Nimbus gets a cookie. Nimbus, are you happy with your cookie? Are you satisfied? Oops. Are you happy with... I just gave you a cookie! It's been a while since I... Okay. Good. Now... Anyway, so in this position right here, which I was at with Blue Goku, I can do this, but this takes way more time than Blue Goose 2M, which Blue Goose 2M hit around 16 frames. This hits around frame 32, which is quite short. However, Kefla does have this. But another thing that changes the position is how big of a threat this is. For example, I can't solo convert that from here. Not only that, but it scales differently as well. It scales like a light, as we can see here. So the reward here is a little bit different, and the properties of my 2M are a little bit different as well. This goes through key blasts, which is really smart. So it's a lot more difficult to stuff at this range for some characters. Now, the reason why I brought this up is because that is literally the only variable in this position. Both characters still have both assists. Both characters are at full health. Both characters have spark. And while Kefla has a slight meter advantage just by virtue of me moving a little bit, they're roughly the same. Pretty much everything is identical except the point characters. Considering the characters and their options is a big thing. And that is a thing that I would say is a very common weakness whenever I evaluate all of my students' play, especially my contestants, is you guys don't evaluate the situation based on your characters. Your characters are a very important part of a position, whether it be your assists or their options. They're fine. They're fine. That is a lot of damage. Interesting damage for 2 assists. I wonder. Ah, cool. Nice. I think I could do it even more. There we go. Hey, let's go. Optimization. All right. But as you can see here, the rewards also vary. In this position, Kefla is not necessarily as threatening to Blue Goku as Blue Goku is to Kefla. Even though the positions are roughly even, Blue Goku can threaten literally three medium starters in this position. Kefla can only really threaten one, and none of them will reach with the same speed as Blue Goku can. This position is not in Kefla's favor. Kefla has to respect these. Now, what does that mean? Why does Kefla have to respect these? Well, she doesn't want to die, but she also doesn't really have threats to mount on her own. Anybody who has played against the top tier while not using a top tier, or played a character with incredibly strong mid-range game, is familiar with the situation that we're talking about right now. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because evaluating a position is what informs everything else. It all starts from the position. So to reiterate, if you're new to this, a position, or what I refer to as a position, is your character's options, the health that they have, the assists that they have. Because, like I said, that's another thing. Assists are important because this doesn't reach. This does. The simple change in assists can affect the position as well. And the assists affect what I can do as well. And assessing the position is one of the tools, one of the skills that you would want to acquire in order to achieve a higher level. So, now that we're learning how to read a position, and now that we understand what a position is, what does it mean to have a positional advantage? So right now, in this hypothetical situation, our frame advantage counter is reading 0. The first thing to evaluate about who has a positional advantage is to assess what is known as tempo. The biggest issue, I would say, my biggest regret when teaching these concepts is I feel like people think that tempo and positional advantage are the same thing. They are not. It's like saying a croissant and French cuisine are the same thing. A croissant is a French pastry. It is a part of French cuisine, maybe even a staple of French cuisine. It is the most popular pastry of French cuisine, but it is not the entirety of French cuisine. They're not the same thing. That is essentially what tempo is to position and positional advantage. Tempo is a part of positional advantage, but tempo is also on a scale. So for example, let's say right here, I am -4. Technically, Kefla has the positional advantage. I'm technically -1 because that's how long it took me to land, and because I jumped back. So, here's the issue. Kefla can easily attack Blue Goku, but nothing she does will punish me. And I have enough tempo, because I jump back, that if she starts attacking me, I have enough tempo to avoid it. So for example, if I jump back and then do this, she can no longer Ki Blast me. Especially if she tries to attack my landing, she doesn't have enough time. Tempo, specifically, refers to how much time something takes. For example, this is 10 frames. The further back I am, the longer it takes to travel. So even though this is 10 frames, the further back I am, the more time it takes for it to travel and hit my opponent. And those measurements, that small amount of time, can greatly affect what I am and am not capable of doing. In a way, you could think of tempo and advantage very much like plus frames. So, if we have something that's plus, we technically have something that's plus at all times. 6M. 6M on hit is +3. But anybody who's ever hit somebody out of 6M, there's no move that I have that's fast enough to hit my opponent unless I call an assist and time it for the moment that I hit them. And so on. I can cheat a little bit, depending on the character, but the basic truth is the same. The basic principle is the same. Oh. But the basic principle is the same. I'm not plus enough to really do anything unless I have something that can allow me to convert, like an assist or in Beerus's case, an orb. Why is that important? Because just because I'm plus doesn't necessarily mean much. Being plus in this game is kind of worthless. Another situation that's technically plus would be if I do this. I'm +2. But anybody who's been in a post-vanish situation without an assist knows that they can reflect, they can jump, they can backdash, they can jump forward, they can reversal, they can DP, they can dash OS. They have enough time to dash OS. They have so many ways to defend against this. And the only real option that I have is meaty. The only thing my plus frames guarantees is that my opponent cannot press 5L and win if they do. Here's the thing though. If I press 5M, they can press 5L now, because even though I have the advantage, or rather in this case, the tempo, I have the time to press 5M, 5L will still likely beat me because I don't have that much time, even though I have time. So the amount of time that you have is important. See? Oh. But if I do... I don't have that much time. And in neutral, it functions very much the same way. Now, we don't want to look at frame advantage to measure tempo. That's not really what this is about. The point that I'm trying to illustrate is that everything you do takes time. And even if a situation seems like you would have the advantage, that really depends on a lot of factors. Positional advantage does rely on tempo, but that is not the only thing that determines positional advantage. For example, if I jump into the air, no matter what, my opponent has the positional advantage if they remain on the ground, especially if they're crouching like this. Why? Because everyone has a universal anti-air, which means I cannot recklessly approach them without risking my life. And that anti-air, for those of you that don't know or don't know Kefla, big starter. Big starter, guys. You do not want to get hit by this. So, in this regard, the risk and reward is something one must also consider when assessing a position. Is it risky for you to do something? And is that risk greater than the one your opponent assumes? A good way, a good metric for risk versus reward is the reward greater for you or greater for your opponent? So if I'm pressuring like this, if they mash on me and they're right, they get a light scaling starter. If they're wrong, so not really in their favor. Like in this position, if I do it to Kefla, for example, and Kefla decides to mash on me, she can do what? Maybe she can do this. Recovery. Oh, I forgot how to do it. So we do maybe that, which is a pretty decent amount of damage, pretty decent amount of meter. But that's not the same thing as getting TOT'd. See, that's a big deal. But what if the position looked like this? What if the position looked like this? If it looks like this, there's still a big threat here. You don't want to get hit by this, it's not going to tickle. Especially if I go for damage. Which actually is less damage than my normal combo, by the way. So that's why you should do it. For my Kefla players out there, if I see you not building bar, I'm going to be really mad. You're out here making me look bad. Not the same. Now, I could probably spark if I want to spend my spark. So I could do something like... something like that. If I want to build extra meter, that'll probably do about 7k, especially if I go into, you know, double supers or whatever, if I have enough bar. Oh, except I don't have an assist. But that's kind of a problem. You see what I mean? Because this is still not quite the same thing as... Not quite the same thing as that. So, if it's not quite the same thing, is the reward in their favor? No. But is it a lot less risky for them to mash? Yes. And does that positional difference affect their decision making? Yes. It makes you a lot safer to mash on. And because you're safer to mash on, you might actually get mashed on. That is an example of how a positional difference could affect you in pressure. Now, what if the situation was like this? Let's throw another wrench into it. What if the position looked like this? See what I mean? It took a while for those assists to come back, but if I'm staggering stupidly with this much health and my opponent, let's say my opponent is perfecting me, or, you know, in this case, let's make it a little bit more realistic. Let's say the position looks something like... something like this. We're both technically one touch away, but I have to be right and frame trap you. This position looks completely different, and she has assists. So if she kills me, I die meterlessly. Not only that, but she has additional options now because she still has her assists. She could reflect tag out, for example. She can reflect lariat, and if she gets a lariat, especially with the EX lariat, I die. Especially if I don't anti-reflect. She can fuzzy jump JS. She can fuzzy jump super dash. She can dash jump plus assist out of my pressure as well. She could do something like if I'm in the middle of pressure. So this is very, very important. This is a very dangerous position for Kefla. And now, even though this is a TOD starter, we're in a different position because I no longer need those resources as much to TOD. This is a waste of spark at this point because I can literally just do, especially if I have my I can literally just do this, and if I have another assist, I can kill. If I have limit break, meaning I don't have my other or if I don't have my other characters available, then I can still probably kill with limit break here. It's not that hard. But notice how even with the medium scaling starter, I still require resources. I still require bar. I still require meter. I still require all of these things to go in my favor, when all she has to do is literally just that. No meter taken. No meter required. No assists required. The position is now completely in her favor, which means mashing is significantly more likely. Now, it is in your best interest to mash, because the longer you sit here and block, the more ambiguous Kefla's pressure becomes, and it can be very difficult to manage. This is an example of how paying attention to the position can inform your decision making and can inform your opponent's decision making. I know that was a little bit. So, even though, by the way, and this is very important to note, this is with me as the aggressor. This is with me as the aggressor. Which means, if this is with me as the aggressor, I should theoretically have the advantage. I have all the advantage here. Right? I have all the advantage here. But if I'm wrong, I die. All of that advantage that I had when I had health was kind of lost at this point. I am no longer as big of a threat. Now, you could argue, yeah, but my opponent doesn't want to die, because if they die, they're in a worse position. That's true. That's another thing. That's another thing that they have to consider, which is an example of how positional evaluations in this game can get very, very, very complicated. Now, here's what's very important. Do you analyze this in the middle of a match? Yes and no. You should be aware of when it is in your best interest to do something, and you should definitely be paying attention to your opponent's health, their bar, and their assists. Every single second you can afford should be spent looking at their resources and constantly thinking about the position. But are you thinking, oh, if I do this optimal thing, but if I'm wrong, I'm going to be like, sometimes people do, but generally that skill comes with reviewing your matches after, which is why I often tell you guys, watch your replays, watch your matches. You will learn to recognize and spot these positional situations. So, how does that apply to neutral? Well, very simple. Actually, before I go there, do you guys have any questions? Am I making sense? Are you guys following along very well? If you guys have any questions, now is the time, because I want to make sure I don't lose anybody. So now you guys are getting a little bit more context whenever I say that was a bad mash, even though you won. The reason why I say that was a bad mash is because you got nothing out of it, and the risk for doing it was death. There were much safer options you could have taken that would have risked your life less. I wonder, can one end up applying this without noticing? Top players do it all the time. I'm sure if there is a top player watching this, they're probably like, oh, I never thought of it that way, but yeah, that makes sense. There are a lot of people that are just naturally good at this game and understand basic situations and positions. The only reason why I'm bringing it down into a science and basically an a section of Dragon Ball FighterZ quote unquote academia is because I have to be able to make this concept something that I can teach to others. Which means it's something that everyone needs to be able to understand, not just the talented. Not to say that you guys aren't talented, but you know what I mean. We're not all prodigies. Yes, we know you are excellent at the game, Everlyn. I do agree that you have a pretty good talent, but unfortunately, not all of us are so gifted. I do have a slight tangential question. Go for it. Now's the time. When discussing positioning, is there a more convenient way to disambiguate spatial positioning from the more figurative and holistic positioning you were talking about? No. Because there's already a word for spatial positioning, which is literally just called spacing. Spacing. Positioning is holistic. Which is why I use that word rather than, oh, space them out. Yeah. So spacing refers to, just like anything in physics, it refers to the distance that must be traveled, while tempo refers to the time that must be traveled. The time it takes to travel that distance. For example, here, I can't quite reach, but or better yet, a really great example. Doesn't reach. Does reach. However, this requires me to dash first. Now the startup says 15, because from the actual startup of a move, it is 15. However, I have to dash for 2 to 3 or even 4 frames in order to get the full screen distancing, which adds time. Meaning, if they were right here, they wouldn't be able to dodge this, but if they're right here, they may be able to dodge that in time. Now, that is still extremely fast. That doesn't necessarily mean it's possible. But if they were already thinking about moving, it's possible that they would avoid that accidentally. Which makes this not exactly the smartest thing to whip out, because if you do this, and they, for example, were doing something like this, and were thinking about doing something like this, and they landed right as you decided to dash and do this, it's possible that they would ID back, and now you have lost all of your positional advantage and the tempo. So, how do we gain tempo? Well, the biggest thing is everything that we do, no matter how optimal, takes a certain amount of time. Jumping takes time, this takes time, backdash takes time, ID back takes time, stuff like that. Like, all of this takes time, especially for throwing out pokes. So the best way you can maneuver a situation and maintain a positional advantage, which is, by the way, I would say the biggest problem with a lot of my students, is avoid unnecessary movement and avoid unnecessary pokes. Your pokes should reward you with something. For example, if I do this is not rewarding me, especially if the position looks like this. If the position looks like this is not rewarding me. This is actively hurting me because there is a timer counting down and my opponent has no incentive to move forward other than sheer boredom. You are literally banking on boring your opponent to death, especially if they demonstrated that they do not have the intention of moving forward. Not only that, but doing this against the Kefla is ignoring the position because she can literally, do this and go through key blasts. And if that hits me, I die. This is not very good positioning. A lot of you guys do this. Some of you will even throw out beams unnecessarily in the hopes of bypassing neutral and jailing into vanish, not realizing that jailing into vanish costs you a resource that you may need to spend in order to kill. Your options are limited here. This position is still winnable. You could still win if you're careful. You can still make a comeback. These characters do really high damage, especially if I have Spark. However, in that position, it's completely worthless, and worse, it's actively dangerous for me to continue to do so. So, another thing that I see is a lot of this has a place, but it has two issues. I kind of want to see if you guys can identify the issues with it. What are the two issues you guys think I'm going to say with doing this as a movement pattern? What is the problem with just doing this? No, not doing it once or more than once. Doing it as your main form of approach. You're in this position and you do this. Very easy to attack your landings. Not necessarily. You can react with anti-airs. No, you can't, because I'm not doing anything. I'm literally just backing off. There's not a lot you can do to me offensively here. Especially if I have 2 assists. Well, it's just slower than running, I guess? No. You see, if you run, Kefla can just do that. Kefla can also do that. She can key blast you. You will just run into her buttons. No, it's not better than running. I'm sorry, it's not worse than running. You reduce your options compared to if you stay grounded. You don't want to stay grounded against the Kefla. Kefla is extremely strong grounded. The problem is this doesn't incentivize an opponent to do anything. This incentivizes them to play and to spend an assist. But if I do this, what if my opponent just does, you know, this? Or ID back to maintain the distance, or backdashes, and then backdashes, and then IEDs over the assist. So for example, let's say I do this. Okay. I can avoid it pretty easily. Even if I just stay right here. That took no effort, and I can whiff punish that 5M. Let me get a little bit of distance. And if I block it, you don't have enough time to attack me. That's another big thing. Watch. Plus 11. What do I have that is 11 frames that can hit here? Or faster than 11 frames that can hit here? It looks like you're indecisive, so your opponent wouldn't be intrigued to do anything that gives you an opening. Not necessarily. A lot of people react very poorly. There is incentive here. I wouldn't go as far as to say that, necessarily, but... Nothing hits, bro. You are correct. There is literally nothing here that can actually attack your opponent. Now, your opponent is in a positional disadvantage, because that's 29 frames. So if I do, that's +8. I have nothing. This is my fastest option, and that is more than double the length of time. And even if it was the proper length of time, I just spent an assist. If I want to do this, I have to vanish or spend more resources to even confirm that. See the issue? So, the problem with this is that this is bait, but it's inflexible bait. The two problems with this position is that the reward is very low, even if you're successful. And it is overly defensive and yields no offensive value. In other words, it is not flexible. So what would be an alternative? That's this. That isn't. That takes too long. That takes too long. Now that is an attack, because I can air dash at any point in time. And what's really cool is that if you decide to do something interesting, like for example, if you do, here's another issue. I can just jump over your assist and attack you. I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna attack your landing. And I can do it accidentally. Thank you, Majin Buu Gaming, for appreciate the follow. See, that's an issue. So, if I dash, float. If I dash, float, that's where things become a little bit interesting. Now, even if that doesn't necessarily grant me a turn immediately, it is still incredibly hard to deal with. See, I can't just IAD over because I have no idea where she's going to land or how long it'll take her to land. Because if she does this, she can short hop, or she can float forward. She can fast fall forward. She can float back. So that's float forward. She can float back, air dash. She can short hop, back dash, short hop, cross up. Oops. She can short hop, cross up. She has so much flexibility here. And if I try to chase her, she still has access to back dash. So if she super dashes, which is why I often make fun of you, Wing Dude, because if you're losing to super dash constantly, there's a problem in your movement, not the mechanic. This is very flexible. If you're very good and you have good reactions, this halt will make it very easy for you to control the angle to bring your button in range to properly super dash at the angle you need to, or to properly jab super dash. This is so much more flexible, and it is simultaneously defensive and offensive. You are attacking, you are moving, attacking, and defending all at the same time. Because this is aggressive, but your opponent can't really stop it. This is interesting because if your opponent tries to air, you can backdash out and you have more options than they do. You maximize the efficiency. In other words, even though your opponent here has the positional, technically the positional advantage, they don't. They have the tempo because this takes time. And my opponent hasn't moved yet, meaning they can just pay attention to what I'm doing and they're gonna get there first. However, what if they don't know where I'm going? You introduce hesitation because of flexibility in the position. So you super jump to pretty much anything, button, air dash forward, back and use button. You could, yeah. Those are options. Those are not the only options you should take. And your opponent's probably going to be moving as well. But the point is that you went from having no options to having nearly all of them. And now your opponent has to retreat, even though they theoretically do have the tempo to become, you know, they do have the tempo to attack or assist. They can beat your assist, they can chase your landing, they can attack you and do everything. But remember, doing all of that takes time. So if they were to attack your assist or reflect your assist, they lose tempo, which gives you the positional advantage completely now, in addition to tempo. This is why I often tell you guys, avoid the assist. Avoid, reflect, block. That is the hierarchy of dealing with assists. Number 1 should be italicized. Avoid the assist. Because if you hold this assist, you have lost tempo. You are forced to block something. Your options are now completely limited. So let's go ahead and define positional advantage completely now. Positional advantage means whenever you have the most amount of options available to you and your opponent has fewer options available to them. The fewer the options that they possess, the stronger your advantage. So this is a positionally advantageous position because it forces them to do something at the cost of a resource while my movement is incredibly flexible. But it's not unbeatable. My opponent can just super jump back. My opponent has options here. For example, my opponent can just simply rising super jump JL if they want to try to air and be aggressive. They can super jump back, float. They can short hop, so that way they don't give up their positional advantage. They fast fall, so if I end up doing something like super dashing, they can 2 HP properly. And they don't cede very much ground while still avoiding blue coup. For example, let's say I do that. With a simple short hop. A simple little short hop back. You get the idea. But that doesn't change that my opponent was forced to act. I threatened the opponent. The opponent could not just sit here and do this. If you see a top level player, especially Wawa, doing this, or this, at this distance, or this means you have not presented them with a threat. They are simply waiting to see what you do in order to respond accordingly, while also buying time for their assists. If you see them doing this, that means they're doing that and buffering. So if you end up coming a little bit too close to them and you're a little bit too friendly, they're buffering. This means that they feel comfortable enough to sit here and not moving unnecessarily affords them the advantage. If you're doing this, for example, the entire time and Wawa's just doing this, he has the positional advantage. If you super dash him, you're getting 2H'd. If you approach him, you're getting counter hit or he's gone. There's very little you can do here. The only thing that you can do to force an opponent out of this, threaten. They need to feel threatened. And we're going to cover how to create threats and exactly how to define threats in a much, much more in-depth masterclass. But this is the secret. If you guys are wondering, man, why does my neutral suck? Why does Ken... How is it that every time I think I can attack Ken... Like, press 1 if you feel like this. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I've been training a lot of people. Press 1 in the chat if you've trained with me as a contestant or because you're a tier 2 sub, and you have routinely thought that you had me, and then you just instantly lose neutral. I like the baguettes. The inclusion of the baguettes. I don't often get that far. Yep. Yep. Now here's the thing that I'm going to tell you. If you feel like you had me and then you didn't, you never had me. And the reason why you felt like you did is because you were not evaluating the position correctly. You did not realize how much time your option and decision took to make, and you did not effectively limit my options to leave. In other words, your threat was too obvious. And because of that, and because I evaluated the position, I knew how much time I had to leave and optimally take my turn back and punish you for it. Now, how can we begin to assess what our options are versus our opponents? The first thing that we can assess is our range. Max range is important. So if I have the ability to cover this in 14 frames, 16 frames, this is a pretty huge amount of distance. And it's a big starter too. If I'm not careful, or if you're not careful and you get hit by this, you got TOD. That's kind of been the running theme, hasn't it? You were wrong, you got TOD. Not really the funnest thing in the world. Would you say for a bit of an aggressive player to use this often and vary your way of using it? Then of course using all your options. You don't have to use all your options. The options that you have are going to be dictated by what your opponent does. What I'm trying to say is that if you're a very aggressive player, and this is important, if you are an aggressive player, and you have to be if you play characters like Blue Coop, if you are an aggressive player, you need to threaten. Being aggressive is not the same thing, and this is very important. I don't care if you clip this, because I think this is one of the most important messages that the mid-level really needs to understand if they want to break that barrier and start taking on the big leagues. If you're in NLBC, if you're in HOC, if you're in Europe and you're somehow awake and you're watching this and you're trying to get on Wanted, this is the big leagues. This is the big secret, okay? Being aggressive is not the same thing as being unga bunga. Being aggressive is not the same thing as I'm just gonna press all my buttons and I'm just gonna spend all my assists and I'm constantly super dashing. Like, no. That doesn't happen. This is the easiest way to die. This is the easiest way to die. You will die for this play. If you think playing faster than your opponent is going to save you, if you think playing faster than your opponent's going to save you, if you think, oh, I need to play faster, if you're like mashy, if you're constantly trying to punch your opponent, you are the easiest opponent to kill. What I see when I see an overly aggressive opponent, or when I'm fighting somebody, or I'm doing a ring match evaluation, or I'm seeing matches between two people, and I see, I'm not going to name names, but there are a couple of players that people think are good that I really don't think are anywhere near as good as people think they are. And I don't mean in the US, I mean in the EU. There's a couple of French players that I think are pretty weak. When I see people constantly aggressing because they're afraid of a 50-50, or, you know, they're like, oh, I gotta take control of the match. Whenever I see that, all I can hear is, I'm afraid of my opponent. I'm afraid of making a mistake. I'm afraid of what my opponent is going to do to me if I let them play. So I can't afford to let them play. I have to make sure I win by any means possible. I have to punch them. What you don't understand is that ambiguity is the single most important trait that a player can have. Ambiguity is your shield. Ambiguity is the thing that is going to make you strong. The best players live in ambiguity. Their mix-ups are ambiguous, their pressures are ambiguous, their intentions are ambiguous. And I can list a position, I'll go over it, and which really showcases how ambiguity is important. If your opponent knows your intentions, they will always know how to properly respond to you. So if you're constantly trying to hit me, all I have to do is exactly like in our previous example. Just simple short hop back, 5M the whiff, 2H your incoming, 5S your careless approach. All I have to do, I don't even get to play the game. All I have to do is babysit you. Because you've shown me that you're not ready to play at that level. You cannot play at the highest level if you are constantly afraid of allowing your opponent to play. I'll say that again. You cannot play at the highest level. And I'll word this in the way Magnus Carlsen did, and I would love to watch that interview with you guys. You cannot play at the highest level if you are imagining and responding to threats that aren't really there. For example, let's be honest, we're going to have a very frank conversation. How many of you guys, press 1 in the chat or get in the chat, whatever you want, if you're afraid of this? This thing. Oh yeah. Let's see. Oh, right. I can't knock down. I'm stupid. Fuck. Wow, why is he so hard to combo? He's actually really tough to combo, weirdly. And that re-jump is free, but I am dash jumping, so that might be why. Fuck. Yeah. You can beat it by staying full screen and walking backwards, I think. You are correct. Now, I'm not really that afraid of this. But it's not just walking backwards. It's also blocking while standing. For example, if I see you do this, watch what happens if I do this. Or if I just block standing the entire time. Now, is it insanely dangerous at this range? Yes. 21 frames? That's very hard to react to. You're probably not 2Hing that. .24 frames. There is a lot of threat here. But the point is, if you're afraid of it here, there's a mistake. But if you're afraid of it here, you're actually smart. This is a very strong lariat. However, you can still punish it. Carefully. Oh no, it's actually hard to punish if you're too close. Really hard to punish if you're too close. Yeah. Yeah, it's very hard to punish if you're a little bit too close. It's about 3/4. You can knock her out of it, but you can't really convert there. But you can take your turn because you lose his tempo. Though you can't quite punish her on whiff. Unless... Why is she so safe? Oh my god. There we go. It's still very, very hard to whiff punish. Now, at this range, it is significantly stronger. It is a threat that you have to manage. So, what do? We learn her ranges and we play at this range. Because at this range, we also have another tool to our advantage. Reflect. And if she's not careful, 2H. Now, what's the point of this exercise? If she's at this distance, she's gonna lariat. You can avoid it quite easily. He says as he gets it. And if it hits you, you're plus. That's the thing. This is a range in which she would want to do it. If you're a 21 player, this is the range. Do not let her access that range. So this movement pattern against her is incredibly powerful. Especially because you can call your own assist. Oops. And that is how you start scoring positional wins. This is how you keep your movement ambiguous against a character like 21. This is how you begin to manage your opponent's options, by understanding their ranges and knowing your ranges and how much time you have to traverse a distance. I know how long, instinctively, that this takes to cover a distance. I can measure that time in the lab, but I know how long I have to punish my opponent. And that is very important. Understanding your opponent's options is going to be a fantastic way that you can begin to mount your own threats. That is very, very, very important. So, do we have any questions so far? So, how can a lack of ambiguity get us killed? And how can we look at a position and look at it a little bit more flexibly? That is a very tall assist. Yeah. Wow. Oh, this seems actually pretty strong. I'm gonna say this. The only reason that I understood that was because it reminded me of some league rules of positioning where you stay out of the range of your opponent. No, that's good. If you can find an analogy, that's important. So, is everyone clear? I want to see some ones in the chat. Is everyone clear on what tempo positioning and positional advantage is now? Okay, but is there anything where ambiguity and a bad thing is a matchup? Yes. You don't want to be ambiguous where you don't need to be. In other words, resets. Resets are pretty ambiguous. So something like, especially if you're in Spark, like I see a lot of people do this in Spark with Kefla, for example. Unnecessarily. I was gonna quit playing drums today. I don't know why. Never quit drums. Yep. Resets are where ambiguity is not necessary. And the reason why it's not necessary is because you don't actually need resets. Just take your damage. Completing a combo and securing favorable Oki is a lot more situationally advantageous than trying to get cute. It is deeply unnecessary. It is really unnecessary. It is deeply unnecessary. You also don't want to be... You also don't, like, basically, you don't want to be ambiguous anywhere where your opponent doesn't need to interact. Like, just finish your combos. I missed my window. Oops. Two bars made her positive, almost. Nice. Yep, I was experiencing fencing, except I was I was the one with Vegeta normals versus Goku to him. I feel that. Now, here's the thing that's very, very important. Okay. Do not try to be super ambiguous at all costs, and do not try to go for dumb mix-ups where you don't need to be. So the point is that I think a lot of people are trying to do too much. So there are a common mistake. The biggest one is trying to do too much. Simple is better. Having simple, clean, efficient movement is the best thing. You don't always need to pin. And you don't always need to attack. You don't always need to take, guys. That's the important thing. You don't always need to constantly aggress your opponent You just need to leverage your advantage, leverage the position, and when you are in a position that requires offense, you need to threaten. You need to threaten. We've discovered what that is, but you need to threaten your opponents. That's super, super, super important. But you also don't need to constantly attack them. A threat is enough. And you also don't need to overpoke. You need to allow silence to befall a position. Meaning there should be situations where neither character is necessarily pressing something an obnoxious and unnecessary amount of times. The reason why this is important is because the more you do something, the more you weaken your position. If you're spending your assists when they don't reach, I've seen a lot of you do this. Why? There's no reason to. Now you're hoping that your opponent will run into your assist, and maybe they will. Maybe they will. But I don't know that. Also, Saber, just because I don't really have time to, I'm gonna DM you. Hang on. But yeah, point is, you don't need to constantly leverage your position. You don't need to constantly attack them. You don't need to constantly do too much. Over poking the fish will ruin it. So if I have the life lead, is it best if I don't approach? I never said that. If you have the life lead, it depends on how wide that lead is. If it's like a little like life lead where the bar is a little bit in your position, it's fine. If you have like 2 characters versus 1, you can still approach, but the point is that you don't need to. The thing that kills ambiguity is when you force your opponent. What do I mean by that? So let's go back to this example right here. This is a forcing move. Your opponent cannot afford to sit here and block this. If your opponent sits here and blocks this, they're dumb because they just let you win neutral for free. The threat here is do something or you've lost neutral and you have to hold my pressure. That is what you say when you do this. Okay? Do something or you hold my pressure. That's a threat. Now, as we showed, this position's not necessarily that difficult to navigate. There's a lot of counter options. There's a lot of counter options to it, obviously. Oops. Like that, you know. Like that. Like that. Like that. There's a lot of ways that you can get out of that position. Now, Gogeta also has ways to navigate around that position as well. But if you are not flexible, you're going to get hit. If you are inflexible, and you're constantly moving, you're not going to know what to do. So, but here's a question. What about it is this, what about this particular thing makes it so difficult for you to fully understand? Oh, not at all. You can apply this to any one of your games. You can begin applying this right now. This is very, very, very easy to apply. It's very difficult to master. Do not get overwhelmed. Stay within your lane. But you can begin to apply even the most basics of these principles immediately. Actual practice, I know I'm going to mess it up. Everyone messes it up. I mess it up. It happens. But practice is the only way you're going to get better. And it's fine. But hopefully, this was a lot of information. I'm going to go ahead and cut it here. I know it was a little bit of a short class. Please make sure to join us for the rest of the week. By the way, we do look forward to we do have some stuff planned. I am going to do more competitions as things ramp up. I'm very, very excited. Make sure to catch us tomorrow for a very special stream. I understand that a lot of you work or are in class and may not be available, but tomorrow I have a very special announcement. Our very own WTG Star is on a promotional match for Wanted, and we will be restreaming his matches. So if you guys are interested in my commentary, if you guys are interested in watching it together so that way we could shout out and support the boy Star and make sure that Damascus is getting his views, please go ahead and join me tomorrow. I believe it starts at 1:30 Eastern Standard Time. So we're going to go ahead and watch it then. But we're very, very excited. By the way, it's Everlyn with an I, not a Y. So make sure to be there, guys. It's super, super exciting. We're going to go ahead and support our boy Star. It's going to be really, really lovely. Hopefully he wins. Even if he doesn't, we love him anyway. Make sure to show him some support on Twitter. Make sure to follow Damascus and, watch Wanted. But it's going to be really, really fun. He will be fighting Nuestra Familia, which is a very, very exciting player. I'm very excited to see how Star handles him. It's going to be fantastic. So make sure to join that. I may stream a little bit later tonight because I'm going to go to bed extremely late because I'm going to spend at least a little bit of time training Star and preparing him for Wanted. So I may stream a little bit. You might get a double stream tonight. And if you guys are up really, really, really late, and please trust me, I understand if you don't. I don't expect viewership on that particular thing, but you guys can sit in on a training session with me and Star as I go over a game plan for him, and it'll be fun. It'll be very late. We're talking like potentially 1 a.m, 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time late. So it'll be very, very, very late. Don't stay up if you're not going to, but if you are up in the DGen hours, feel free to pop on by. By the way, don't forget to also join us on Wednesday night for some more matches. We're going to work on getting you a really fun card. I fixed my PC, so everything is running really nice and smooth. So we shouldn't have any more technical difficulties. God, I hope. If you guys like us, make sure to support us on Twitter. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Weiss_training for updates on the stream and content that we have coming out. We are uploading YouTube videos again, so make sure to follow us on YouTube as well and check out our videos. Make sure to like and subscribe, share them on social media so that way we can get this place growing. And if you guys want to support the stream directly, please consider donating or subscribing. Donations are the best way to support us. Please, because this inflation's fucking killing me. Food costs are absurd, so I need to keep my fridge full. If you guys want to donate so that way I can continue to eat and survive, so I can continue teaching you high-level Dragon Ball, I would really appreciate it. Any amount really helps. And if you guys want access to the Discord where you can hang out with me and Star, train with us, and get some feedback and fight a like-minded community and not have to deal with netplay, consider subscribing. Any tier will actually get you in, so make sure to consider doing that so that way you get access to that Discord. I think this is where I'm going to call it for now, guys. Make sure to tune in next week as well, because next week we will be building on these topics as we go into evaluating neutral positions and we start talking about how we can use what we've learned and built today in creating threats. It's going to be all about threats. So if you guys are excited, make sure to do that. But I was going to ask for a sub for my B-Day, but that's a Giga Brain play. Guys, can somebody hook up my bro Nas with a birthday sub for his birthday, guys? That would be really, really nice of you. That would be really nice of you. So if anybody wants to hit my boy up, that'd be great. Also, my birthday is on April 5th, so hopefully we can plan something interesting. Saber, just do it. Anyway. Yeah. Also, guys, if you're here and you want a nice, relaxing stream, okay, and you want a nice, relaxing stream, go follow Never Saying Ever. They do Friday Night Fights, which is... Thank you so much. They do Friday Night Fights, which is a fantastic little series where it's more casual, but all of the contestants and myself usually show up there, and it usually turns into some shenanigans. You guys can catch Drop Top Nimbus on the mic, Nimbus Wimbus, my boy with the Tims, my phoneme grave. You guys can catch him. It's really, really fun. It's a really great time. Crash will show up periodically, and more importantly, get access to other trainees like Ryan, which is always really exciting. And it turns into utter and disgusting chaos, but they also do really, really relaxing streams as well. They stream farming games, Genshin Impact, and Persona. They're going to be starting Persona 5 Arena, which I will be labbing with them. So if you guys want, make sure to go check them out. Never Saying Ever, or twitch.tv/Never Saying Ever, which is really, really quite nice. And let's see if I can actually raid them. Let's see if I remember how to raid. That sound happened right as soon as I clicked the gift and I was confused. Lol. Blue Hedgehog beat you to it. Oh shit. Damn. I'm having problems. Oh no. What problems are you having, Ken? What problems would those be? My capture card isn't working. Oh dear. So I'll be just a minute. Oh, that's fine. In the meantime, while we're waiting for Everlyn to boot up, you guys don't have to necessarily leave. We're going to raid them now. Actually, Everlyn, if it's all right, I'm going to raid you now. Just keep them entertained. Please keep in mind that they are having technical difficulties. However, I'm going to go ahead and raid them now anyway, so that way you guys can have a good time. But make sure to hang out with them and keep them company while they figure out their capture card. And they will be streaming Persona 5 Royal for a little bit tonight. So make sure to hang out with them for a bit, guys. Thank you so much. And I hope you all have a wonderful time.